Hello everyone and welcome back to our 2026 Kimberbell Digital Dealer exclusive mystery quilt adventure with Material Girls. I know I'm running a few months behind. It's now February and I'm just now posting videos for December, January, and February. So I do apologize, but we'll get caught up here. The latter half of last year and this year have been a little crazy. But we are now ready to start. Everyone should have their designs, all should be sorted out with the Kimberbell transfer of the website, and you should have your designs. You will find your designs in your digital library with Kimberbell on Kimberbell's website. If you go in there, you should see every month on the first of the month, the design for the month be added to your library. This month is our bonus block. This block is to kind of like a little warm up. We're going to go over a few things, and pretty much a lot of things are just going to be repeated with technique wise over and over here the first couple of months. So let's get started. First up, if you have not already located your cutting chart for your fabrics and your fabric kits, if you have one, this is your cutting chart. You will find this located in your instructions folder on the files you download. And in there is a guide that looks like the one here on the right. This one here, it says your Getting Started and Material Guide. You will find your cutting sheet inside of there. And this is what it looks like. It breaks everything down by fabric and all the pieces that you need to cut. And what size you're going to cut them, and what size you need to cut them if you're going to quilt, and if you are not going to quilt in the hoop. So if you're going to quilt in the hoop, certain files you will need to cut according to what is in the blue column. What also is great for us this year is these little green hearts. These little green hearts designate the fact that we need to apply fusible backing to the wrong sides of these fabrics. So this allows us to go ahead and get all of that attached to the back side before we ever get to that particular month. So you can just truly get everything 100% prepped and ready to go, so that when the design drops, my video's there, you can knock out your requirement for the month. Everything is there step by step, like I said, each fabric. I would hold off cutting your inner border and outer border, any bindings or anything. You won't need that. They're easier to store if we keep them whole than having them cut into strips at the moment, and we won't need them until December. There's also cutting diagrams for every single piece of fabric that is in your requirements, and they show you a picture of how they expect you to get those fabrics out of that, those cut sizes out of that particular fabric. And there's also an embellishment and tools required list. If you have an embellishment kit from Kimberbell in your kit from Material Girls, you won't need to cut anything. It's very nice that everything this year is already cut and ready for us. And then just set it to the side, and we'll use them as we need them each month. Most of it, if it's a dimensional embellishment, we won't even attach to the project until the last few months of this year. Again, like I referenced, this little guy is in your instructions folder. You will find the project prep booklet, which goes over a few basic steps and your cutting information. And there's also a resource guide. Now, throughout the instructions here, you're going to find them referencing back to the guide. And when they say the guide, they're talking about this one here on the left, which is our resource guide, that you can reference back to that with kind of their general overall instructions for all of their techniques. So here is our ornament block. We're going to kind of go through. I'm going to teach you how to read the instructions and everything like that. If this is your first Kimberbell project, welcome, and it's not going to be hard. You're going to be just fine. So in the instructions, you're going to see hoop size. And that hoop size that is recommended there is if you're not doing quilting in the hoop. If you are doing quilting in the hoop, that means you actually need a larger hoop, okay, because it's bigger than the actual ornament. So for example, this month the block is going to be a 6.5-inch square. So therefore a hoop size of 5x7 is not going to work for something we need to be 6.5 inches square. Now here at Material Girls, we are Bernina. So everything that I reference today or throughout the year will be based on Bernina hoops and Bernina techniques. I'm sure that depending on the brand that you have, you probably have a hoop or a technique that is similar. And when I talk about stabilizers and threads, I'm going to be referencing the names that OESD uses for those stabilizers and Isacord. Those are our thread colors. These are the things that we have here at Material Girls and that we like. So for this design, if you're not quilting, you can use a 5x7 hoop. And if you're not quilting, I want to know why. Because let me tell you, it's much easier to quilt this as you go than to have it custom quilted or you custom quilt it when you are finished. Now, if you're a custom quilter, I can understand. But I much prefer to have it all quilted. If you're going to quilt in the hoop, you are going to need a hoop that can do up to a 6.5-inch square, which in the world of Bernina is a medium clamp hoop. Now that is not a standard hoop that most of you have. It's not one that comes with your machine. You can use a midi hoop, but there is a little bit of a difference that are few little things that we have to do if you're going to use a midi, and I am going to show you. It works just fine in a midi hoop. I did one of the 2 blocks that we need to do here in a midi hoop because my medium clamp hoop wasn't with me when I did it. So it's not difficult at all to do. And these are the 3 thread colors that you will need. In your bobbin, you can have a neutral color bobbin thread. The embroidery needle you want to have should be brand new to start this project. And you should be able to get the first couple of months out of this needle. Unless you're doing a titanium, then you could probably get quite a few months. For me, when I'm finished embroidering, I take the needle out and I keep it with my project pieces or my kits, and then I just can use that again when the next month comes up. Because typically a standard embroidery needle is going to get you maybe 2 to 3 or 2 to 4 hours of embroidery, and then a titanium needle is going to get you about 40. And this is just easier for me to track. I just keep that needle with my project. All right. Let's look at the top of the instructions that you have. So each month you also have in your instruction folder block instructions. At the top of that, it reads what you see here. You see the name of the block. You see that we have to make 2 of them. These are the fabrics that we have, and they should be inside of your kit already cut. Now, when I cut my project, I cut everything at once. I sat down, popped on a movie, and I cut my kits. And then I sorted everything into January, February, March, so on and so forth. And that way everything was together. I wasn't rooting through my fabrics or trying to figure out what belonged to what month. And as well, I made sure that I got all the fabric I need, all the sizes I needed out of the fabrics that were provided by cutting that way. So it was just easier for me to sit down and do it all at once. And then we have ironed the fusible woven lining to the back side of the background fabrics. And then you see a picture of the design and then basic information of hoop size and things like that. The design by itself would fit in a 5x7 hoop. But again, because we're going to add quilting to this, it's going to throw the hoop size up. Okay, these are the 3 thread colors that we're going to use. You will see the color numbers that are there, reference to glide thread. And I have given you the color chart and reference information at the beginning as to what I have used in the world of Isacord. There are 2 ways to do the quilting portion. Option one is quilting block by block in the embroidery hoop. And option 2 is going to be if you are not going to quilt at all, you're going to quilt after your entire project is finished. So this is your traditional option. So if you're not quilting, you're always going to follow option 2. In these videos, I am going to reference the quilting block by block version. So in block by block quilting, you can see that they tell you to hoop your stabilizer only. Now in my hoop, I have a piece of poly mesh. Okay, poly mesh is a light to medium weight cutaway stabilizer. We are going to need to open the bows 2 design. We need the 6x6 side, and we need the design to be the horizontal option. Okay, when we get into the quilting files here in a moment, you'll see that in this particular design, we have them going both horizontal and vertical. The block file is going to go in the hoop, and then we're going to center the embroidery design inside of that hoop. Now, I like to combine everything into one file and do it all at once, but if that doesn't work for you or you don't like that, you can absolutely quilt, close the quilting design, open up the embroidery design. Just do not take your item out of the hoop until after you have done both parts of our project. So let's take a look at how to set up the design. So here is my USB stick. Now I have a couple of extra months on here, but we're going to go into the promotion folder. This is your bonus block. Inside of there, you will see 3 files: background quilting, embroidery files, and instructions. Instructions is where you're going to find that prep guide, the resource guide, and the block embroidery instructions. We're going to start with our background quilting. Okay, so I'm going to open up that. This month we only have one quilting design, so we don't have to choose. Some months you may see that you get more than one, depending on what we're doing. Now, when you come into the quilting folder, you're going to see 2 other files. One is going to be the instructions that relate to this quilting design, and the other one will be actual design pieces. The instructions for the quilting file aren't really necessary for you to open or print. I do typically print page 1, and then I keep this in a binder to keep me organized, to know which files I own, okay, which designs I own in the quilting world. So I will just print that one page. The rest of the information in there is the same no matter what collection that you do. It has our basic steps for how we are going to work through quilting this file. And I even teach a different way than what is in there. Okay, so we're going to open up embroidery files, and then you're going to find the format that you need. In the world of Bernino, we can actually read almost any of the formats that are here. You cannot read art on the machines, but I'm going to open EXP, which is our native language. You will see that there are a bunch of different files in here. We are going to look at the file name, and we want to find the one that says 6x6. Okay. And there it is. Okay, and there's 2 of them. Now, obviously, I can't read the whole file name here. So I just kind of look at the pictures, and I know I want the bows that go horizontal. So I'm going to open that one. If you do not have a hoop on your machine, it'll open up in the medium clamp if your machine is updated to the most recent firmware, or you can put it in the hoop of your choice. So we're going to go ahead and add the other design, and then I'm going to talk about how you could do this in a MIDI hoop. To add a design, you will touch the plus sign. Now, I'm working in the most current line of machines. This is a 790 Pro. This user interface is the same all the way back to the original 770s, 750s, 740s, even into our 5 series. So it's pretty much the similar. If you don't have one of those machines and you're operating, just find the location on what you need to do to combine designs. So I'm going to hit the plus sign here. I'm going to navigate back to my USB stick. So for me, the quickest way is just to hit the USB stick versus going backwards out of all of those folders. I'm going to come into my promotion folder. I'm going to come into embroidery files, EXP, and there's only one file in there, and I'm going to hit that. Now, the design or the instructions told us that the design was going to be centered inside of quilting. Perfect. Not a problem. As long as in the world of Bernina, when we open a file, as long as we don't move it, it will be centered in the hoop. So I opened my quilting design, it put it in the middle of the hoop. I opened my ornament design and it dropped it in the middle of the hoop. So my centers are aligned here. I don't need to do any sort of moving of any file. Now, if you don't own a clamp hoop, you could, like I said, we could do this in a midi. The biggest thing that you're going to get when you put this in a midi is it's going to give you that red ring of I can't embroider. But it's okay because the machine will still embroider. It's just going to eliminate the pieces that are outside of the hoop. And if I look close enough here, the pieces that fall outside of the hoop are actually just the smallest corners of the placement line and tack down for the background fabric. Okay, we still have the placement line and the background fabric that fall inside of here. We just don't have the ones on the sides. Not a problem. Not at all a problem. We can still embroider this project. None of my quilting design is outside of the hoop. None of my embroidery design is outside of the hoop. So if you only have a midi and you do not have a medium clamp hoop, that will work. This would not work if you chose for your oval hoop, because if you see here, when you were to zoom in, part of your quilting design falls outside of the hoop. And we can't really, it doesn't really work well when we don't have all of the quilting in the embroidery hoop. Okay, so the midi will work and the medium clamp, okay, is our option. Let's travel over to the machine. You can go ahead. White thread is going to be our first color stop. And we're going to walk through the steps of how to do the quilting. Okay, I have put my hoop on the machine. Stabilizer is in the hoop. And I have run color stop 1 of our file. Now we're going to start with the quilting file. That's how we loaded it in the machine. Whatever you put in the hoop first is what's going to embroider first. So we added the quilting and then we're going to do the ornament. The first color stop is going to stitch us a placement line for a piece of batting. Now it's your choice. Kimberbell is going to suggest project batting. I don't necessarily use project batting. I use actual quilt batting from my leftovers at the ends of my quilts when after they've been long armed, that type of thing. The only thing that I do is I make sure that they are all the same types of batting that I use in here. But you can absolutely use project batting. Project batting is a blend of batting and stabilizer kind of built in together, which you can use. But again, last couple of quilts that I've done, I've used a poly stabilizer and I haven't had any issues. In the instructions that come with the quilting design, there is a chart telling you what size you need to cut your piece of batting. So you find your file name and it tells us that we need to cut this size of batting. So we're in a 6x6 file, and that means that we need to cut our batting 7x7. So it's pretty much an inch larger than the quilting file size. Now, for me, I don't like to cut my batting that size. I think, especially if I've bought project batting, I think it's wasteful to cut, basically a 1/2 inch larger all the way around just to cut it off, because we would place that 7x7 square here, run color stop 2, which is going to stitch the same thing again, and then we would take scissors and trim all the excess off. Now, I prefer to pre-cut my batting to size. I am going to cut a piece of batting the same size as the file name. So I have a piece of 6x6 batting here. So I just use a little bit of a washable glue stick 505 glue stick works well too. I do not use any spray or anything down here by my machine. This is just temporary. It's just designed to kind of hold on to the batting while I get my fabric in place as well. Okay, so I'm just going to stick my batting down there. And I'm going to skip color stop 2 on my machine. Okay, I'm not going to sew it. I don't need it. I'm not going to be trimming anything. This is cut to the exact size. Now, color stop 3 is basically going to give you a placement line for your fabric, which is fine as well. But I don't really need to know where my fabric's going to go, right? It's pretty obvious. It needs to cover this square. We have an 8-inch background piece here, so it's plenty big enough if I center this over top of my batting. Okay, so when I do this, I just kind of look and make sure that I've got about the same amount top and bottom. It's an 8-inch square. We're going to be trimming down to 6.5 inches. So we have plenty of fabric here. Once I have this, you can run color stop 3, or you can run color stop 4. It's completely up to you as to which one that you do. They are the same. I'm going to just run color stop 3. Okay, there is our tack down fabric. Now you may have noticed that as I did that, I just kind of hold my fabric down. I kind of follow it around to make sure that it doesn't get bunched up or get puckery, so that it's nice and taut. Once you are tacked in place, their next color stop 5, is going to be our quilting design. We are going to run the design in the background fabric color. So for this, it's going to be white. Okay, there is our quilting all complete. We're now ready to start working on the steps of our ornament. So let's take a look at those instructions. Here they are telling us we're going to stitch the inner placement line, and we're using the color labeled L. Now, back at the beginning of the instructions, she applied a letter to each of the color stops, and L is taffy. So that is 1753 for me, so it's my pink color. We're going to work through appliquing the center of this design. So we're going to let it stitch the placement line. We will then place our fabric right side up. It is the smaller pink rectangle. We are then going to stitch the tack down, and then we're going to trim the line, the fabric, close to that line that it just stitched. Okay. Now, you will see in this upper corner there are some numbers. Those numbers technically are going to relate to color stops. They're only going to relate correctly to the color stop if you did not combine the quilting design with the embroidery. If you have combined the quilting with the embroidery, your color stops are going to be off by 5 ultimately. So there was our placement line batting, tack down batting, placement line fabric, tack down fabric. Color stop 5 is quilting. Color stop 6 is our first part of our design. So ultimately, color stop 1 is really color stop 6. For me, I usually just pay attention more to looking at what the machine is asking for me to do in here to find and reference myself. Or if it really throws you off, you can do a couple of things. You can, 1, add 5 to the numbers that are on the document, or you can come back to editing, select the quilting design, and then delete it. And don't touch your ornament, but then that will put you back at the original that'll put you back at the original numbering that would match the instructions. That's there. Okay, so we are going to go ahead and get our machines ready with that thread color, and we're going to run through the first step. There's our placement line. We're going to take our piece of fabric. We're going to place it right side up on top of this shape. Now, this is a solid piece of fabric. There is no right or wrong to it. And there is no fusible woven or interfacing on the back of this. Right side up, making sure I completely cover all of those previously stitched lines, and we're going to stitch again. Now, the next color stop, or the next step before we do another color stop, is to trim this fabric. Now, it's up to you as to the style of scissor that you like for trimming your fabrics. I recommend either the double curved, okay, that are there, or a pair of applique duckbill scissors, which looks like this. And Kimberbell has a pair of mini duckbills as well. I just don't have them in this bag. Okay, it's up to you. I'm gonna work with these scissors right this second. Oh, this is about the size of the Kimberbell ones. And I'm just going to very carefully work through, cutting as close to the edge of that stitching line as I can. Don't be afraid. Turn the hoop versus trying to manipulate your body. You should always do this on a flat surface, not on your lap, because we don't want to push down on the stabilizer too much, because that can then cause movement, and then things may not 100% line up later. If you accidentally clip a stitch or two, don't worry, don't panic over it. It'll be okay. There is our first applique trimmed and ready to go. Next up, we are going to repeat this process with the other fabric. Okay, so same thread color. We're going to stitch the placement line, place the fabric right side up over those lines, stitch it, trim it, and then we are going to put it back on the machine and we will run the decorative outline, which is going to secure all of those raw edges. Now, once your decorative cover stitch is done, our next set of color stops is going to repeat the process with appliquing the little green micro velvet that is in the embellishment kit in the folder labeled January. So you want to pull out that little green square, and we're going to work through appliquing it and tacking it down, trimming it, and then doing the decorative cover stitch in the green thread. And the particular green thread is going to be what they refer as aloe, and for me is 5722. Now, once your bow is appliqued and cover stitched, we're going to stitch the final color stop of the design, which is going to do the ornament's decorative details, and we're going to do that in your white thread. There is our completed design. You're going to repeat this process, making a second one just like this one, and then we are going to trim them up to the size that they need to be. If you used a medium clamp hoop and you were able to get the complete fabric tack down, that square, technically, that's holding our fabric to the stabilizer, should be the size we're going to trim this block to. Now, I always check. So yes, so 6.5 and 6.5. Because fabric does shrink and whatnot, so you don't always want to rely exactly on those particular lines, because they may not always be correct. If you have your orange pop rulers And if you used a midi hoop, you are missing the side pieces, so you don't really have a full square to measure to. This is the Orange Pop square. This is the one that is 6.5 inches. Basically, we're going to lay that down. If you did it in a smaller hoop, and again, you're missing those, you're going to line up the lines with the top and the bottom. And we're just going to visually make sure that this is in the center of this inner square. Okay. Once we are there, you're going to trim. And I have this on a smaller mat, or if you have a rotating mat, you can just rotate the mat. We don't really like to pick up the design and move it. And I left my rotating mat at home. Okay, and we're going to cut all the way around until we have a 6.5 inch square. And you're going to repeat to have 2 of them. So they'll look just like that. All right, that was our first month. That is your December 2025 bonus block that goes towards the 2026 Mistletoe Mystery Quilt. I hope you maybe learned something, or I at least got you motivated to start this project. And I will see you back here real soon with our next block. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you real soon.